All right, guys. I'm gonna do the weekly review thing. Um, so I'm not gonna lie, with the discussion boards this week, I was a little disappointed. Like it was definitely not your guys' best week, and I think posture is a pretty interesting topic. I don't know, maybe it's not for you. I just felt like, some of you just kind of really rushed to get it done and didn't put forth your best effort. Like I know we're 5 weeks in, we're almost there. Like you're gonna be on the downhill slide next week, but I just challenge you, like I didn't think your discussions were bad, but I thought some of your responses to your questions were a bit lacking. So, just try and keep up that good effort. I know sometimes it's hard, especially when it's summer, especially when it gets hot. There's more you'd rather be doing. But trust me, like I'm still working hard in this class, and this is what I'm doing in my spare time right now. So, I just challenge you to keep forth that effort. So first off, sorry, there's a lot of ums in there. On the we'll go over the MET one. I thought that one was pretty cut and simple. It found that MET to the pec minor improved the resting position. However, there was no change in the upper rotation of the scap. But I do like in the end that they mentioned, there's a lot of things that contribute to the scap upward rotation. It could be weakness in the other areas. And the fact that if we have this newfound range in the pec doesn't necessarily equate to the other muscles getting stronger. So therefore, that might not suggest the improvements in the upward rotation. But I wondered if it was extended for a prolonged period of time, if we could see that change. Because, in any of our rehab world, we're going to work on that pec, but then we're also going to work on the upward rotators. We're going to work on the scap retractors and all those things. So if we combine the MET with our actual rehab, we might see some different results and might see some differences in that upward rotation. Um, so I thought that was beneficial. But I think it just goes to show you, hey, we can make the change. But remember, these were asymptomatic swimmers, so we also have to take that with a grain of salt as well. So will we see this lengthening in a pec minor that might be a little bit more irritated? But the reason that's huge, so the lengthening is important, because we know that in the conditions such as impingement, such as instability, such as some rotator cuff pathologies, that pec tightness leads to some of that malpositioning, which is important that, if we correct that, then we can get that improved positioning of the scapula. So the one I liked better was the longer study. And first off, I just wanted to clarify, I didn't get the vibe that they told the people that they couldn't exercise. I know that was one of the concerns that I think, Tom, you had brought up. I did not get that vibe. I got that this was the group that already didn't exercise, so we're going to throw them into the non-exercising group. I don't think they said that you couldn't exercise, but the way I read it was that was a group that was like, no, I don't even want to do 2 hours of exercise a week. So I didn't feel like they were excluding anybody and telling anybody that they couldn't exercise. I just think they found a group that was already a non-exercising group and just had them continue in their non-exercise, was kind of how I read that. Again, that was kind of up for interpretation because they didn't completely say that. But what I got from it was that was a group that didn't exercise. This was kind of their, normal lifestyle, and they just didn't change that lifestyle. I did like the fact that it was only 2 hours per week, so that wasn't overloading. One thing that I was surprised nobody brought up, though, the TA is not mentioned anywhere in this study. And if on our in the book, like the TA is huge, and I agree that the TA is huge, but it wasn't mentioned anywhere. We do the rectus abdominis, which in my mind is like low man on the totem pole. But they used it because it can have specific changes on the pelvis. It can move the pelvis. But I was surprised nobody mentioned that. Like the TA is so important, and that was one thing that I thought that was lacking in this study. I do think that it was also cool that they brought up the proprioception, because that is how the CNS also influences, has that influences, with the joint receptors, and the CNS has to do with the proprioception and all that fun stuff. I did like the study. I did like that it, one thing that they did correlate to is that maybe just, they can't specifically say that, yes, there was some improvement because of our training. It could have been that this group was a more active group in general. So maybe that's why they had the improvements. So, they do, it does appear that there's that link, but, they can't control all the variables, especially when it's such a long study. So, it appears to be that way, but it could just also be that, hey, this was a more active group, and that's why their posture remains better. I did like that they compared posture to riding a bike, and that you can fix it, you have the motor memory there. You don't lose it, but you do have to make that conscious effort. So overall, it does say that, hey, if we can do this targeted amount, it does help. It doesn't always extend into adulthood if you don't make that conscious effort. However, if you choose to work on it, it is something that's still kind of there and you can bring back, is what I got from this study. And as I mentioned, I think it was Hannah who'd mentioned or asked about how early we should implement it. Anytime you can get buy-in, the better. Like the earlier, the better, because then hopefully it becomes more habitual. Hopefully it becomes more ingrained in their mind. So overall, it was positive in that, hey, we found these training results. They were good, even on the kids, and I like the longevity of this study. So, I think posture is so important. I think, low back pain, I know it's one right now. I have a patient right now who's a young kid who very much postures like this, and, forward head protrude, that just anterior posture. And my student is there, and I'm having her do the exercises. And, when she does that external rotation, she goes into that increased lumbar lordosis. I do the external rotation with a pinch grip for improved scapular retraction as well. That's what I do the external for, is again, just to get that scapular retraction. But when she does it, she has increased lumbar lordosis. And like my student wasn't picking up on it. I'm like, hey, yeah, you have to brace the core. You have to control the lumbar spine when we are working the scapular spine, and vice versa. When they're going into that anterior tilt to get decrease that lumbar lordosis, when they're going to that posterior pelvic tilt, are we compensating by, having increased kyphosis at the scapula? The thoracic region. So I just challenge you, when you're fixing posture in one area, you definitely have to watch the posture in the other, because it will try to compensate for you. So especially I see it so much with the young girls when they try to, correct here, then they go to an increase in lumbar lordosis, increase anterior tilt, and vice versa. When we try to bring them back in the lumbar spine and decrease that lumbar lordosis, they come into a forward flex posture of the thoracic spine and of the shoulders. So just make sure you're watching that when you're treating posture. Posture is so important. Shoulders, hips, everything comes from the spine. So we have to make sure that it's stable. We have to make sure that we're getting that good posture. We have to make sure that we have sufficient hip extension to make sure that they can even begin to get in that good posture when they're ambulating and different things like that. So posture is vital. Core stability, it's huge in everything. Okay. All right. Week 6. Yeah, of course, I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But again, I like I said, I think the weeks get more and more interesting. So hang in there, guys. If you would try a little bit more on the discussion boards next week, get back. I know they take time. I know it. But I take the time too to look through them, to provide those responses, and I read all the things too. So just hang in there. You're doing good. I guess it's officially hump day, kind of, with there being 5 and 5. But hey, now you're going to be on the downhill slide. So hang in there. You're getting closer. All right, guys. Hope you had a great week. Thanks.